audible?
Yes, sorry for that. Very good afternoon to one and all present here. I, Sharvin Kati, on behalf of Pimpri Chinchwad College of Engineering, Pune, and entire PCSOE CSI student chapter, would like to extend a warm welcome to all. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I welcome our today's speaker, Mr. Pushkar Shah. He has completed his Master of Engineering in Computer Science from New Jersey Institute of Technology in Newark, New Jersey, USA, and currently he is working as a project coordinator at International Institute of Intelligence and Data Science. And I would like to mention he is also alumni of PCSOE. Also, I welcome our guest speaker, Harsh Meshram, and he is the technical head of International Institute of Intelligence and Data Science. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the chat box and be sure you're on mute. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our speakers. We are very eager to hear you from you, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Let me share my screen. That's yeah. Hmm. Okay. So can you guys see the PPT?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. Okay, so let me start. As mentioned, my name is Pushkar Shah. I've done my master's from NJIT and I've completed my engineering from PCSOE in the year 2018. Okay, and I have with me Harsh, who is the technical head of Triple IDS. Okay, so let me start introduction to cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity refers to set of techniques and methodologies that we use to protect our systems, networks, programs, and data from outside attacks and unauthorized access. And contrary to popular belief, like cybersecurity does not always like hacking something. Okay, cybersecurity actually has a lot of domains, and some of those are as you can see. So I would like to tell you all of them. So theorizing and proofing concepts and cryptographic algorithms, maybe dry runs that you're used to do, like you run your programs on paper and stuff. So here you analyze all your algorithms and other theory proofs and all here in applied cryptography. Applied cryptography is the major playing factor when you see all the cryptic algorithms and stuff. Like whenever you send a message or something, you see the message, right? That this is encrypted, point to point encrypted, right? That is because of applied cryptography, because somebody was able to theorize these algorithms like DES, AES, etc. That's why we were able to like implement them. So applied cryptography is actually a major player in cybersecurity. The next, the next and the most popular uh, thing in cybersecurity is penetration testing. Now, penetration testing involves hacking, directly hacking something, and penetration testing actually penetration testing involves actually hacking stuff. You use all the tools and things that we are also going to show you some of those later. And here the testing is actually an important word. Penetration testing is actually used to test a system whether it's secure or not. The next domain is forensics. Now, forensics is actually used after a cyber attack has taken place, right? So, forensics we use to analyze how the attack has taken place, how the hacker might have used, what tools he might have used, how he would have entered the system, or what damage has he done. Is he copied any data? Is he does he still have access to our system and stuff? So that all comes under forensics. Now in compliance is actually set of rules and guidelines that you must follow. Uh, Compliance is actually set of rules and regulations that everybody must follow. So there are different types of compliances like ISO, etc. That we security operations. Operations actually involves like day-to-day security stuff. So like each company now has a security team under them. So most of these people are from SecOps, as they like to call security operations, and their tasks is to secure the network and systems on a daily basis, right? And so next thing is pillars of cybersecurity. So pillars of cybersecurity, if you want to remember them, you can always use the abbreviation CIA. That's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality. Now these three are the set of pillars that every cybersecurity concept must follow. Every system must follow these in order to be called secure, right? So confidentiality means that we protect our data or system from unauthorized access. That means if someone from the outside who does not have permission to view that particular data, or let's say someone from the inside also who does not have the authority or permission to see that data should not see it, right? That's confidentiality. Like if you consider let's consider the example of Google Photos, right? When you talk about Google Photos, one of the most important aspect of it is that the photos that you have uploaded on your Google account should only be visible to you, right? Or somebody that you have given access. So that's confidentiality. Integrity means that the data is as it was stored or edited. Let's say if you let's again consider Google Photos. If you uploaded a photo in particular way, size, resolution, etc., so it should be like that, right? Even the date that at which you upload or you have taken the photo, that should be maintained in that system, right? So that's integrity. The data should be as it was uploaded or as it was stored. The next thing is availability. So availability actually means that whenever again in case of Google Photos, whenever you log in into your Google account and go into Google Photos, all those photos should be visible to you, right? You should be able to access them whenever you want. So these are the three terminologies, these are the three pillars that every system must satisfy. Now if you check like various websites, some of them mention that there are five pillars of cyber security, the last two being non-repudiation and authorization. But if you check that way, although those two pillars are actually covered under these three some way or the other, right? So for the sake of this webinar, or like in actual books, it is always given that there are three pillars of cybersecurity. Now, types of hackers. Like broadly, hackers are of three types: white hat, black hat, and gray hat. So, white hat hackers means the hackers that hack for good, which means that they perform penetration testing. They try to hack a particular system and then get to know their vulnerabilities and tell the organization that these are your vulnerabilities and you need to fix them. Those are white hat hackers. They are actually legally binded. They prepare a document which has to be agreed upon by them as well as the company that they are performing the penetration test for. So there is a standard format for those documents also that you can find on various websites. That's not an issue. Then there's black hat hackers. These are the hackers which actually hack for bad. That means that they hack a particular system and then they do not like they cover up their tracks. They choose to be anonymous and they hack for their own good. That means they need the data or maybe stealing money, infecting a system, etc. These are black hat hackers. There is a third group of hackers called gray hat hackers. Gray hat hackers are actually hackers which are combination of both, but what they do is they hack some company and they let them know that these are all your vulnerabilities, but they may or may not have bad intentions. Let's take for example bug bounty hunters, right? Bug bounty hunters are people who hack a particular system get to know their vulnerabilities and report them in order to gain money, right? In order to earn money, they do that. So that's gray hat hackers, right? So these are three. If you check some websites, they'll mention like more type of hackers, like hacktivists or state-sponsored hackers, but those can be differentiated into these category. Hacktivists are actually hackers that hack for some social or political campaign. Then there's cyber terrorists also. There's script kiddies. So there are various types of hackers that you can find on other websites, but those can be broadly categorized in one of these. Uh, next thing is red team versus blue team. So when you are working in cybersecurity, you'll always be working within one of these two teams, right? So red team and blue team. So red team actually involves like trying to hack stuff, right? The penetration testers that we are talking about come under red team. They try to hack. These are the like on your screen you can see these are the types of attacks that can be simulated by them. That means they try to hack a particular system using maybe all these techniques or some other techniques, right? And blue team is the team that is deployed to cover up or maybe to try to protect the system, right? So blue team may involve security operations team that we were talking about earlier. So the if you consider a cyber attack, right, which can be classified in these two teams, red team and blue team, and if you like if you have play many games, there's always the concept of capture the flag thing, right? So capture the flag exercises and all are conducted like this in a particular cybersecurity company or an environment wherein there is a red team and there is a blue team. A red team is given all the assets that they possibly can use. They can physically also break in into the company and try to hack it, and blue team has the job to protect that company from this red team. And that way the company comes to know that these are all our vulnerabilities and we need to work on them, we need to fix them. So then they can deploy a combination of these two teams in order to secure that, and that's actually called purple team. Purple team is a new concept that's come up, which is actually a combination of red team and blue team, which try to like secure a particular system after the attack has been simulated. Then there's types of attacks. There are actually two types of attack: active attacks and passive attacks. In case of passive attacks, the user may just be seeing what all things he wants to see, just viewing stuff and not actually changing anything, and just gathering information, getting to know stuff. And in active attacks, it's actually they're trying to modify stuff. For let's say if somebody is listening on to your conversation, that's actually passive attack, because they're just trying to listen and not change anything. And if somebody tries to change the communication, let's say if you're messaging someone and someone the attacker actually breaks into your communication channel and then changes the message, that's active attacks. So for example of active attacks are DDoS attacks, rat attacks, modification of message. And passive attack, there's eavesdropping, which just means listening into somebody else's conversation. Man in the middle can be classified into active attacks as well as passive attacks, but it depends what you are doing with it. Man in the middle can just be thought of as as eavesdropping only, like two people are trying to communicate or do something, and there's a third man in the middle who tries to listen into both of those conversation. Traffic analysis that we are going to see later in the demo, it also comes under passive attacks. Now we'll see some demos. See, so the first thing that we're going to see here is Google dorking or Google search scanning. So I'm just going to go onto Google here. Uh, can you guys see? Okay, so let me continue. Anyways, okay, in Google search hacking, whenever you search for something, let's say you're searching for your results, right? You search results and you search, let's say Uni Pune, and then you're going to get these type of things, right? Now Google search hacking means that you could get to whatever information you want very fast, right? So let's say if I write here in title, there are actually various keywords which you can use, which I'm going to demonstrate here. So I'm going to write here in title results, and maybe let's say file type PDF. What this does is I'll get results from Google that are always PDFs because I specified this thing, right? File type PDF. So I'll always get PDF results from Google. Yeah, and here also I can also specify, let's say, in title Uni Pune. So you get this thing, right? exam.unipune.ac.in pages results.html, and it's a PDF file, right? And I can also write here inside, let's say again Unipune. So it will only search this website. Right now you cannot find any PDFs. One of the, I mean, I personally like this search, which is index of search, which actually gives you, let's see, you can see here like we love dogs dot Japan. It's a movie, and then you can find, like, if you search this, you can find like many things. Index of is actually a page inside your website, right, which contains all your files, list of all your files. So if you like, if you are able to modify this search a little bit, you can actually find whatever movie you want on Google itself. Like, you don't have to go into torrent and torrenting and stuff like that. You can actually find it like this. I'm not going to show it, but you can. Then I'm going to show you this very cool website called ExploitDB. Yeah, this is one thing that I needed to show you. If you are trying to dork Google, that means you are trying to modify Google search, it will always ask you whether you're a robot or not after like 2 3 searches. That is to protect Google. Exploit DB is the list of exploits. You can go into GHDB, that's Google Hacking Database. This is like all the Google search things. Maybe they specify some vulnerabilities here. And if you actually go back and go into this Google Hacking Database, it actually has all your searches that people have conducted, and they try to save it here, right? So these are all the authors, and these are the searches that they have done. You can open and see all those searches, like what are the results that they provide and stuff like that. And yeah, so I'm just going to demonstrate like one more maybe that involves me. Like, if you search my name followed by file type, that is PDF, you can get my anxiety commencement PDF, right, which has all the names of all the people that have passed out at this time at with me. This is one, has you might have read in the news about Aadhaar card leaks, right? So that leak was actually discovered using this exploit DB technique, Google dorking technique. When you search for Aadhaar card, earlier it used to appear. Earlier, if you would have searched my name along with file type PDF, you would have got one my copy of my Aadhaar card also. So that's bad, right? And you can actually have a list of all those things. On all those terms that you use, there are like multiple terms like in title, in URL, file type, all in title, all in URL, and stuff like that. And you can actually get what you want, like you can get most of the data. You can also write something like in title, let's say password, and file type, let's say XLS. XLS is a sheet, right? Excel file. So these are all the things that you can do. And when I was like trying this stuff, I was able to find a Excel sheet that contained password and ID, that is username and passwords of all employees of a company. So these things you can do just without like writing any code, or studying like most of the things. You can actually do this. You can actually write in URL, let's say admin, or let's say /admin login.php, let's say. You can find like admin login portals of many things, and if you have an Excel sheet that has ID and password of all your company employees, and you have the login credentials for a company, you can like do many stuff with it. Okay, let's now show you. I want to show you SQL injection also, right now. Okay, let's show you SQL injection. So I have this web app that I want to run here. So Apache 2 is a software through which you can run web apps on your own system, right, to test them out. So let's say, okay, so it's live. Now I want to go into mm, let me see. Mhm. Let's check. Yeah, and if you go into this, I have set this up like this, and let me show you guys SQL injection. Now, SQL injection is actually a technique through which you can like input. Let's say you all guys know SQL, right? So SQL is a structured query language where you store databases and stuff. And most of the websites that are coded right now are have a backend as SQL, which means that all their login credentials are actually stored as an in an SQL database. So if I want to explain it to you, let's say that there's a login page, right? So it will ask us for, let's say, a username, right, and a password. So when you input a username in the backend, most probably the code will be like they'll be getting, let's say, your name into a text field. Let's say get username is the function that returns the username, right? So it will be like user get username. So your username that you input in within the login field will get saved in the variable user. And now they'll be doing something like select star from, let's say, the table name, right? So select star from credentials where username equals user, right? So this is what they'll be doing in the backend to get your username, or the data which is stored in your username, which may be your password or stuff like that. And then when they check this against the database, so they'll be checking like if data dot password is equal to the password that you entered, then grant them login permissions, right? So when you're using SQL data, SQL injections, you try to navigate around this statement, right? You're trying to hack, or maybe let's say break this statement, because there's a condition here, right, where username equals user. So what if there's something in the user which makes this statement always to be true, right? If this statement is always true, the SQL database will actually return the data of all people, or the whole table will be returned essentially, right? So when you are doing SQL injections, you are going to navigate around this statement a lot. So let's say, what conditions will you think will always be true? Like 1 = 1. This will always be true, right? Let's say 2 = 2. This will always also be true, right? So we have to navigate around something like this. So A equals, let's say, this A equals this A, right? So these statements will always be true, right, no matter what the condition is. Okay, so if you consider, like, let's say if this is input here, so which makes like where 1 = 1, select star from credentials where 1 = 1, so 1 = 1 will always be true. So what SQL will do is it will return the whole table to you. So you use this in order to inject, or maybe get to know the admin name, password, or stuff like that. So I have like a SQL a web app that is prone to these kinds of errors, and there are many websites that you can find on the internet that are prone to these errors, right? So how you do this stuff is, let's say first you input anything, let's say 1 = 1, and then you enter, and it did not give me any result, right? So this is how like you test like what the backend code is on a website in its SQL. So let's say if I input now this, or let's say A equals, let's say 1 = 1, right? So when I submit this, so it didn't give me any result, so right, I have to try something else. So let's say this, or let's say 1 again equals this 1, right? Now if I submit, still didn't give me any results. So now you have to try stuff like that in order to gain access into this particular system. Let's say if I try something more, right? So if I try, let's say double quotes now, because some database tend to use double quotes, or 1 = 1, let's say, and you try to submit, like you didn't get anything. Hmm. Okay, this was the thing. Mhm. Now let's say you do again 1 equals 1, submit. So here you get all the ID and stuff like that. So there are like many different statements which you can use. So there are statements like A = A, which I told you earlier, 1 = 1. Then there's a statement where you just use equal to signs and maybe plus signs or something like that. So those are all, the list is actually available online if you check. So I just have to type this, and like cheat sheets, right? Here you can like get all the SQL injection cheat sheets, which actually has all these things. And then there's like different, uh, see, if you use something like that, drop table members, it'll directly clear the database of the website that you're trying to hack, because drop table actually deletes the tables from database, right? So if you use these kinds of things, you can actually like maybe hack a website in a way, shut it down somehow. So like these all things are like very rudimentary things that an ethical hacker should know, SQL injection being one of them. I would also like to tell you that this all thing is this is local host, right? So this is emulated on my computer itself. It's actually illegal for me to show you some actual website that's been running. So uh, I'm actually using a web app that I have emulated in my Raspberry Pi, and which I am connected to by now, by the way. So yeah. Yeah, so the actual coding of this thing will be shown in a workshop that I guess I'll be conducting sooner. So stay tuned for that. And then, yeah, okay. So now I would also like to show you something about Wi-Fi, right? So uh, let me actually boot up Wireshark. Wireshark is a software which you use to analyze networks, like the networks that I am connected to now. By the way, I can like see what my system is actually transmitting into that network. Let it boot up. WLAN 0, like if you use mm, let me show you iwconfig. This is the configuration of like what my Raspberry Pi is actually using now. So I am connected to a wireless network, right? And I'm connected through WLAN 0 interface. These are the list of interfaces that my system right now has. And I'm actually connected through this interface, and my IP address, for to know my IP address, I have to type this ifconfig. And now my IP address is this, right? 192.168.1.46 inside this interface, which is WLAN 0. Now, if I have to check what my system is actually transmitting into that network, I'll do this, and then I'm able to get all this stuff, right? These are all the packets that actually uh, my device is sending on to my network, and I'll be able to like see all those packets, see what it contains and stuff like that. And now if you uh, see something like let's say, let me ping. So this ping is actually a command through which you can send like just like a message to a website, and get its reply back, and then know like how much time it takes or its IP address and stuff like that. So the ping command actually sends a request to the given website through by knowing its IP, and it sends the request on port number 80. So port number 80 is actually the port for HTTP, right? So it sends the request through HTTP, and then you can get to know the result, right? And if I use something, let's say something like, let's check if the PCCOE website is on .com. Right, we are getting the result back, so that means that the PCCOE website is live now. Okay, and I can do some stuff with it. Trace route, let me give this to the 50 dot google dot com, and then I am able to know like this is links is my router, and these are all the IP addresses that are between me and Google server, which is this, right? And if you check, okay, this is PCCOE, right? Let me go to pccoe.pune.com. So as you can see here, the website is actually not secured. It's just using HTTP and not HTTPS. So I can do some more stuff with it. Let's say, can I know who registered with this website? Obviously I can. So if you use whois, and go to whois.com, which actually tells you domain name. So first what I have to do is I have to ping PCCOI Pune, which I have already done. So this is PCCOI Pune's IP address. So I copy this, I go here, I go to enter domain or IP, I enter PCCOI's IP and I click whois, and here I get to know all the details, which I'm not going to show, by the way, where you can know who hosted PCCO's website, who booked it, who has the rights to it, and etc. Phone numbers, etc. Like the websites which actually have HTTPS enabled, have domain protection enabled. So which means that you cannot know who owns that domain or who is actually responsible for that domain or the number and stuff. So more things that we can do with networks. Let's say, like, you need to know something about this nmap, right? Nmap is a tool which is considered to be the Swiss army knife in network scanning and enumeration, which has almost all the tools that you need to work with IP addresses, right? Which means that you can scan for hosts, you can check if the host is active in your network, you can do various stuff, you can gather all the information there is about that particular IP, you can know which operating system it's running currently, you can know like almost everything about that thing. You can even know what ports are active right now on that particular IP, and if that port is open, you can try to penetrate and you can try to like hack that particular system, right? And now let me actually show you how nmap works. Let's see if I use sn, which enlists all the hosts that are active currently on my network, and let's say I input my network address 192.168.1.0/24. By the way, this is the, let's say this is the IP address range of my network, and you can find that out by doing simple if config. Here you can see that my IP address is this and my subnet mask is this. So what this means is this is actually 32-bit addresses, right? So this is 8 bits, this is 8 bits, this is 8 bit, this is 8 bit. So that's 32-bit address. This is also the same thing, right? Bytes, actually 32 bytes address, this is 32 bytes address. So what you can know from this is 192.168.1.45, okay? And this, in this case, if you were to convert this to binary stuff, binary number, you will know that first 24 bits out of the 32 bits will be 1, which means that for my network, to know my network, I'm using 24 bits out of the 32 bits in order to like name my network in a way. So if you translate this to this, what you can know is this is my network's name which I have internally, and this is my computer's name which I'm using right now. So by using this, you can actually like identify a computer within a network. And now if I use the same concept, so what my network's address will be is 192.168.1.0/24. Why the 24? Because 24 bits are being used to identify my network. So if I use nmap and listing scan on this thing, then it will actually try and list all the species, all the systems that are now in my network, right? So these are all the systems that are on my network right now, that are active on my network right now. And if you like check all these things, and let's say this is, let me Let me check a device. Let me get, okay, let me see. Hmm. Let me ping. Yeah, so you get this host is unreachable. Mm, let me search for a device which I can use. Hmm. So what you can do is you can actually scan and get to know what device is active. You can use that information to actually see what that particular person is actually browsing. Okay. For that, I'll be using a software which is known as Ettercap. So let's say something like Ettercap slash, let's say T is for text mode only. So Ettercap is a software which can be actually used to simulate a man in the middle attack inside your network, so that whatever the devices that are connected in your network, that device will actually see you as the router and will send you all the packets that it wants to transmit into the internet. So what you can do is, by getting those packets and analyzing them, you can know what a person is actually browsing. So if you use something like, let's say this, and hyphen s you is actually ignoring the SSL certification. So that means it will not, the device which is connecting will not be able to verify whether I am actually the router or not. The interface, which is WLAN 0 that you saw earlier, and hyphen M for man in the middle attack. And I'll be using this ARP remote, which I'll tell you. ARP is address resolution protocols, which actually translates MAC addresses and IP addresses interchangeably. And we'll be using an attack which is popularly known as ARP poisoning attack, which means that will be editing the ARP configuration that is there in the network, right? So I'm doing something, let's say 192.168.1.1 double forward slash and 192.168.1.26. Now these two IP addresses I specified because I want to be the man that is in middle of these two, right? So I want to hear the conversation that's happening between these two devices. Yeah. So, and if you see 192.168.1.1, that is actually, like, most of the times your router will be connected to dot one, right? The first device that is connected to your network will be a router because it interacts with the outer world, right? So the first devices that will be connected to your network will be a router, which is actually present in the IP address that almost exclusive one, unless you willingly change it to in order to secure your network. So what network engineers and system administrators do, like, the first thing they'll do, the IP address of the router somewhere in the middle where people don't know, but they are connected in the first place, but actually somewhere in the middle. But this actually prevents many forms of like network attacks and stuff. So if I do this, okay, so right now I can see all the communication that is happening between that device as well as this. Now let me actually stop and restart Wireshark, and hmm, let's say I started again, and now here I can see that these are all the TCP, and this source is 192.168.126, and the destination is the IP address that the device is actually trying to go to, right? So now I have my friend here, Harsh, who is trying to browse something on his phone, and let's say this is an HTTP packet, right? I go to follow and I go to HTTP stream. I can actually see like what he's trying to browse. Okay, he's trying to go to PCCOE Pune's website, right? And through this, like, you can actually know if someone's trying to browse something or do something else. You can use Wireshark filters. Wireshark filters is like a thing that you should know. There are like many Wireshark filters. If you see that way, you go to Google, you go Wireshark filters. So there are like filters in Wireshark that you need to use. Right now, for the purpose of this demonstration, I wouldn't have to use any of those. But let's say right now I was able to like see what he's browsing, right? He's trying to browse. This thing is actually what I did right now is popularly known as sniffing, right? So the people that tell you that sniffing and spoofing, like here I used two concepts, sniffing and spoofing. Sniffing means I tried to listen on to somebody else's conversation using man in the middle attack, which is a form of passive attack. And spoofing is actually because I spoofed, right? I told the other computer, my friend's phone, that I am the router, whereas I was not the router. This is called spoofing. And sniffing means I listened on to his and the internet's conversation, right? I was able to figure out that he's trying to browse this particular website. So this is all is known as sniffing, spoofing attack, stuff like that. And this actually comes under traffic analysis, network traffic analysis, and all those things. Now, using this, you will be able to you'll be able to impersonate your router, and will be able to like listen on to all those conversations between all the users in your network and the internet. So you'll be able to like keep an eye on what everybody else is browsing in your network. So this is one technique that I wanted to show you. And the final technique that I want to show you today is Wi-Fi hacking. Okay, so in order to do that, let me close this. Mm, we actually close this and stop this attack. And let me disconnect my Wi-Fi. By the way, I'll be hacking some other network, not this one. Now, what you need to know right now is this. Let's say these are all the interfaces, right? Of what I showed you earlier. So wirelessly be using WLAN 0, which is my wireless interface. Then what you need to know is this, right? There are like two modes of operation of a Wi-Fi card, network card, which is managed and monitored. So managed means that your PC or your operating system actually takes care of that card for you. And monitor mode means that it is able to view the stuff that a normal Wi-Fi card cannot. So now the device that I'm using, Raspberry Pi, comes with a network card which is able to enter monitor mode in order to scan for networks and stuff. Most common network cards aren't able to do so. So if you want to perform Wi-Fi hacking, you need those special cards that are able to enter monitor mode. So you can get those online. It's fine. And now, let's say I want to enter this card into monitor mode, right? So what I'll do is I'll use something which is called air cracking suit. Uh, Air cracking suit, right? So in order to do so, I'll first use this tool, which is Airmon NG, which is actually a tool which is used to convert your NIC from managed to monitor mode. So first I have to do this check kill functionality, which is it'll check for all the applications that are running, which actually will try to stop my card from being in monitor mode. So I killed those app processes, and now I'll use AirmonNG start WLAN 0. This will convert my card into monitor mode. As you can see here, monitor mode enabled for this device, right? And it will change the name of that from WLAN 0 to WLAN 0 mon. I'll show that to you. And this is the chipset and driver of my Wi-Fi card. And if you want to search for a card which goes into monitor mode, you have to actually use this chipset, and you can check Google whether this chipset is able to enter monitor mode or not. And now if I do iwconfig again, then you can see there's a new thing called WLAN 0 mon, right? This is the same network card but in monitor mode. And now see, here you can see the mode is monitor, right? And now I have to use a functionality called aerodump ng WLAN 0 mon. I have specified my interface through which I want to use this tool. So what this tool does is it will scan for all the Wi-Fi networks that are accessible by my network interface card, and then it will make a list of all those tools and all those Wi-Fi networks. Now if I click enter, here you can see all the Wi-Fi networks that are accessible for my network card, and you can see their MAC addresses. You can see the power through which, by the way, you can also see channel number. Channel number is an important thing. I'll tell you why as we go. And encryption algorithm that it has used, right? So these all Wi-Fi networks are WPA2 encrypted. There are like three types of encryptions generally that Wi-Fi's fall under. One is WEP, one is WPA1, and the third is WPA2. So this is like the highest form of encryption right now, which is possible. And I know, let's try to hack this network. So I know its name, I know its channel number, which is 2. I know its ID, MAC address of that access point. And if I copy this, I'll be able to like do stuff with it. But actually, let me show you this also. Aerodump ng, and then you go -c to specify the channel. And let's say the channel is 2, right? So 2, and then you have to specify the SSID of your network, which in this case is the MAC address that I copied earlier. So you do this, and then you have to specify where you want to save files, right? There are certain files that Aerodump tool catches, which I'll let you know as we catch them and as we go along with it. And here, let me just specify a file name. Let's say I put this hack. Let's say I name this hack. Okay, and then WLAN 0 mon, which is the interface through which I want to capture those packets. Now, if I do this, what happens is, as you can see, this is trying to see what all hosts are connected to this Wi-Fi network right now. And uh, I can see that there are like two devices that are connected. So station means the MAC addresses of the devices that are connected to this Wi-Fi network right now. Let me open up another terminal. Yeah, let's say I enter super user mode, and then I do something like this, AirPlay ng. This tool is actually to let's say emulate some sort of packets. Like this tool will actually formulate a packet that a router will send a device, right? So let me actually show you by doing this. I'll use 0, I'll use 15. I'll tell you what all this means, right? In a second. So, eh, mm, okay, so AirPlay NG, what will do is dash zero. Dash zero means a deauthentication packet. So what this will do is 15. I've also specified the number 15, right? So this tool will actually send 15 deauthentication packets. Now what deauthentication packets do is, right, they'll let the devices know that you are no longer authenticated to connect to this Wi-Fi network, right? So what the devices will do is they'll get disconnected from that Wi-Fi network, right? And when you want to connect to a Wi-Fi network, what your device sends is a beacon packet. What beacon packet involves is a WPA handshake. What WPA handshake is actually like when two devices connect to each other. Let's say phone will try to connect to a router. What it does is it will send a packet saying, hey, I want to connect to your network, and the router will ask for a password, obviously, and the device will then send in a packet that contains that password in encrypted form. So the three algorithms which I mentioned earlier, which are WEP, WPA1, and WPA2, are actually encryption algorithms that encrypt this data, the password data, and that they'll send that to the router. A router will decrypt that data and will be able to verify whether the password is correct or not. If the password is correct, it will allow that device to connect to it. And dash A means in order to specify the MAC address of the router uh, whose whose devices that we want to deauthenticate from the network. And by specifying this, I'll be able to, let's say, send deauthentication broadcast, right, to this particular router in order to get the in order to get the WPA handshake which contains the password. And let's say I actually got the WPA handshake. Mm, and and you can see like there are different files here. What we are interested in is just this file .cap. It's a capture file which has the packet, which is which this packet actually has this file actually has a packet which has the password for that. Now what I'm going to use again is the tool called aircrack. Aircrack is a tool which brute forces its way into passwords, right? So what it will do is, let me also show you an example. I have a text file. Let me has like saved passwords of, let's say, very common passwords that people use. So there are like many passwords that are saved here, right? So this file contains all the password. What aircrack will do is it will take one password, then encrypt it using that encryption algorithm that we specify, and then try to crack the packet that we found in this capture file. So if it finds the proper password, then it will be able to crack that file and let us know the password of that network. Now let me stop this because we've already gotten the packet. And if we do something like this, aircraft ng dash A2. A2 actually stands for WPA2, right? That's the encryption algorithm that this particular router uses. Dash B to specify its BSS ID, which is the MAC address of this router, and we have to specify dash W, which is the word list. Word list is actually the text file that we saw now. So I have to specify path of that text file, and then I need to specify uh, the the file that we have captured right now, which is hack.cap. And this aircrackng will take care of the rest. See, it found the password for this particular Wi-Fi, right? The master key, transient key, EAPOL, with this is the handshake data, the WPA handshake that I mentioned earlier. So this is these are how many keys it tested before finding out the result, and these are all the number of keys that the text file actually contains. So that text file rockU.txt is actually a standard file. If you check on Google, yeah, okay, I'm not connected to the internet in this device. Yeah, before doing this though, a thing which I always forget is actually stop my device from monitor mode and change it back to managed mode in order to connect to Wi-Fi. And now see, station mode is available for this, and so my device is like back to normal in a way right now. Yeah, and now let me start the network manager back. Network manager is actually was actually stopped by Airman-NG. Like there are many services that the Airman-NG actually stops, like, in order to change the mode to network mode. Yeah, so these are all the things which I wanted to show you. If you have any questions, please ask. Yeah, I'm actually done with my presentation. And thank you. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. If you have any questions, please do ask them.
Both attacks are legal.
How to install Kali Linux on our device? Okay, so what you can do is you can go to Kali's website, that is kali.org. You can download the ISO. If you want to install it on a laptop or maybe a virtual machine, or maybe like I have done on a Raspberry Pi, you can download that particular ISO, and there's a software called Balena Etcher which actually burns the ISO onto a pen drive, and then you can directly install it through there. Or if you wish to install it as a virtual machine, you can do that. Is it necessary to have in same Wi-Fi connection as of victim for hacking? Yeah, in case of network scanning attacks, like the sniffing and spoofing that I did, you need to be in the same Wi-Fi network as your victim. but but you can, like, if the password for that Wi-Fi is a regular password, is a password that you can easily guess, you can penetrate that network also. Any other questions? How to get started with bug bounty? Okay. Bug bounty hunting, you can start directly. You have just have to, like, be in the loop of many people that actually post bugs. You can go to these CTFs that are conducted. You'll get to know the methodologies that bug bounty hunters use, and stuff like that.
Acme.
And hackme is another website which you can visit. You'll get to know the stuff, and when you, like, know how to find out bugs, how to properly make reports on it, then you can just directly get started with whatever, like, thing you have to do. Like, there were many many articles in the news recently, like people finding out bugs and companies rewarding them, like Apple, Mozilla, Google. All those big companies are into bug bounty hunting. How we install Airmon NG in Linux? Like, Airmon NG are just a set of tools, right? You can get those tools for other devices as well, right? You can get Airmon NG for Windows also. Like, Airborne NG in Linux, maybe you have to work around it. I don't know the exact error that you are encountering, but if you consider systems like, if you consider ISOs like Kali, Parrot Security, these are used for penetration testing, right? They will have Aircrack NG or Airmon NG or that full suite installed already, right? Which website is good to learn bug bounty? Yeah, you can go to Hackme, you can go to Hack the Box. These are all the CTFs that I'm talking about. These are all the websites that actually simulate penetration testing environment, wherein you can practice your penetration testing. And bug bounty is like similar to that, right? You try to work around a website or work around an app in a order to, like, hack, and then know the bugs through which you will be able to hack. How to learn about different tools used in ethical hacking? Yeah, there are, like, various courses. You can search for courses on Udemy. You can search for other courses. What I suggest is you can actually go for various certifications like this. There are, like, beginner to advanced certifications, like Pen Test Plus, Security Plus. Then there's Certified Ethical Hacker. There's OSCP. There's OSCE, there's the LPT. These are all higher level. There's CISSP. These are all the certifications. And when you register for a particular certification, they'll actually teach you, like, how to hack and how to, like, use different tools and stuff. How can a beginner get to know that whether what he is hacking is legal or is illegal? It's simple. If you have permission, then it's legal. If you don't have permission, it's illegal. If you are doing something to your own computer in your own network,
It depends on your the approach. Means uh, what are your approaches to doing the data afterwards. If you are reporting that to the website owners, then it will be considered as legal. But if you are using it for your personal gain, then it is illegal. Means there is nothing called as legal or illegal in this term, in the terms of hacking. It's the approach you carry forward.
will you conduct a workshop on ethical hacking? Yeah, I'm thinking of conducting a workshop on ethical hacking, which will be conducted in PCCOE, Pimpri Chinchwad College of Engineering. Please do ask the people that are there, and I'll give my email address also, wherein you can contact me and think. Okay, so let's see. Are there some other questions?
So, hello everyone. I am Swapnil. On behalf of entire PCCOE CSI family, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our alumni and speaker of the webinar, Mr. Pushkar Shah and Mr. Harsh Meshram, for such an amazing and valuable webinar and hands-on training of the cybersecurity. Sir, I'm damn sure that every individual who aspires to get into this domain of cybersecurity has surely got a blueprint of what exactly he needs to do in order to achieve his goals. I would also like to thank all my faculties for making this webinar or training possible. At last, but not the least, I would like to thank my CSI team and all the participants who have attended this webinar. Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah, thank you. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'll share my details in the chat. You can reach out to me. Let me copy my associates details and actually paste it in the chat. Yeah. So my email address and my Discord name, as well as my friend's email address and Discord details are in the chat. You can actually connect with us. If you have any doubts, if you need any guidance, you can just mail us. That's fine. All right.